Hope so.
Hi, sir.
Good.
Good to see you. Welcome.
Good to see you again.
We're on the East Coast. Look at that.
I know. It's tough being back here.
Robert used to live on the East Coast and now he's in Berkeley. So,
Yeah.
Welcome. Drew sort of said, you've got to grill him about everything he's doing. And I said, you do know he's a Navy SEAL, right? He said, probably beat the heck out of me if I do. So, no interrogation. So tell us, Novartis Biome.
Mm-hmm.
How did this come about? What was the idea? When did you get started?
Yeah, it was. It's really interesting because this was, I would say, a idea on a whiteboard just as early as 2017, mid 2017, and the problem we were trying to solve at the time was that our drug development organization understood that digital health was going to be the future of the way that we function. They just didn't really understand how we would do that. So what we were tasked with was coming up with a digital strategy that made sense for the broader organization. And what we came up with was actually two distinct constructs. After doing, I'm talking about several months of kind of due diligence and digging into the broader business, et cetera, we came up with two constructs. One was first a internal accelerator that would look at all of the projects that we actually have already running within the business, which the funny part was there was something like 70 or 80 already existing digital health, quote unquote, digital health tech projects that were already running just on their own, globally, throughout the broader organization and the development system. And no one knew what the other was doing, and no one knew exactly what success looked like. There were no metrics. It was just, someone heard about something and they're running a clinical trial and they were like, this might be something that might make sense. Let's try and incorporate this.
It was in siloed as well, probably.
And it was extremely siloed. Yeah. So there were no lessons shared. There was really no cohesive strategy as to how we were going to leverage all of this, kind of engagement we were having with this new ecosystem of, digital health ecosystem. So we needed to create an internal accelerator that would then help to focus the organization and then pick the things that are most likely going to succeed and put those on a trajectory for success. So that was one. We did that great. But the other piece that we figured out was that while we're a company of really great, I think, incredibly intelligent scientists, we're actually not very good at digital health. We're not very good at anything to do with digital health. We don't code, we don't do any of those things well. So we knew we weren't going to be the ones that actually create the digital health and digital health technologies that were going to dictate how healthcare and drug development, specifically, but more broadly, healthcare was going to be delivered. So we knew we had to figure out a way to partner more effectively with the digital health ecosystem. And what we decided to create was a digital innovation lab, and that digital innovation lab became the Biome. That we launched in 2018. So just less than a year later, we launched the lab actually with our flagship location in San Francisco, which we still have, and 15 hubs in 15 different countries, now covering basically every major market on the planet.
And so what's the model? So I understand, do the lighthouses that have been going on, the 70, 80, do they continue, or does everything now have to go through these Biome things?
Yeah, it's a great question. So first thing you have to keep in mind is that it's a pretty large company. It's 105,000 employees, right? So whenever you say we're going to focus on something as a company, the company says to you, "Yeah, right." Right? So exactly. So what we needed to do was to develop an organization that wasn't top down in terms of how it functioned and how it, let's say, for lack of better terms, dictated how the digital health strategy was going to be implemented, but rather one that was both top down and bottom up in the strategy that it developed and the value that it would bring, right? So we needed to one, ensure that there was some skin in the game from the parts of the business that were most important, right? The revenue producing parts of the business are obviously always most important, but Novartis, like many other life science companies, large ones, are split up into actual country segments, right? That in essence run themselves, right? Exactly, and each are responsible for their own top line and bottom line, et cetera, and they report into the mothership. So we knew that if we decided to create something that was coming from global, and we were going to dictate that to the countries, that would last about as long as whoever our executive sponsor was that was pushing it. And exactly. So what we did instead is we formed more of a franchise model. And we said, okay, well, look, we know that what we're building is effective, right? Because we were utilizing an innovation process that wasn't new, right? This isn't a new innovation process we created and suddenly had to, take it from theory to law or to prove it out. It was an innovation process that's been utilized by tech companies, from since the beginning of the tech world. What we needed to understand, or what we needed to convey to them, was that this was actually something of value. And we knew we did that when they started to come to us and say, how can we start this within our countries? And so now the biomes that we have in the 14 other countries around the world are all manned and run and funded by those countries, right? So we are no longer convincing them.
From the countries to be
exactly.
able to do this, and if you don't want it, you don't buy it. Right?
We're like McDonald's, right? So we're very much like McDonald's in the fact that you can go to McDonald's in China, and you can go to McDonald's in Israel, and it'll be McDonald's. You walk in and you clearly know it's McDonald's, but the menu is a little bit different, right? Depending on what's needed for that environment, for that area, what's going to be best for the people that are looking to eat there, right? Same thing with those biomes. The biome in Paris is a bit different from the biome in India, and the biome in India or Madrid or in et cetera, et cetera. And the reason is because healthcare is different in those areas, right? The biome in Montreal functions very differently with very different objectives than the one that we have in San Francisco that's run by the global team. They have a national healthcare system, right? And so the way that they engage and their priorities are different, although our overall goal is very, very similar in that we want to figure out a way to effectively partner with the digital health ecosystem so that we can all reach the objectives that we're trying to reach.
So is it an incubator, accelerator, or is it a place that if I'm a Novartis employee and I have a wacky idea, do I go to this place and say, hey, I've got this wacky idea, can we do something? What's the model?
Yeah, so it's none of those.
Okay.
And all of those. So I'll explain really quickly. I'll explain that. So when we were designing the model, my fellow co-founder Jake Laporte and I were sitting down and we thought, how can we design something that is going to survive just today's problems? We needed to design something that was going to be able to mold itself to the issues of the time and to to solve the problems of the time and to be able to find the solutions or the companies that have the solutions of that particular time. And we knew for a fact that what is a problem today or where our objectives are today were going to be different tomorrow. We didn't know what those were going to be, but we knew that they were going to be different. So we wanted to be able to cast as wide a net as possible in terms of the types of companies that we work with and what we do with those companies as we possibly could. So we looked at incubators, for example, and we said, do we want to be an incubator? Well, that kind of X's out a lot of the many companies that we may want to work with that have that don't need incubation in their solution, right? In their technology, they may be looking for a specific partnership that then leads to licensing or something else. Or do we want to be, an accelerator? Well, that model might not fit right. Or do we want the opportunity for employees within Novartis to be able to come in and say, hey, I have X problem. I think Y is the way to solve it. I'm not sure, but you guys are the experts in the space. How do we engage with the digital health ecosystem in a way where I'm going to find the best in class globally to solve this problem? And so what we came up with was a little bit of everything and none of all of it, right? So we can incubate, we can accelerate, and we can create. So we do everything from hackathons to pitch challenges to run market scans to testing things in evidence labs in partnership with healthcare systems. You name it, we've built a set of products and a capability under it that then allows the business to be able to execute on it.
So it's more of a, sounds like I have a business challenge, I'll come to you and maybe you'll help me figure that out with some partner out there that you may have found that can do this stuff. Right?
Yeah. In many ways, it is. So if I describe really quickly the innovation process, it'll make a lot of sense then. So the innovation process is pretty straightforward. It's, the first step is understanding the problem that you're trying to solve. And what we found was that the business would often come to us before the Biome existed, with a crazy idea like, I want to, I'm looking for an AI bot that is able to, better identify patients with COPD. And the first question, we'd ask is, well, what makes you think an AI bot is the right solution? And they say, I don't know, I saw it on a commercial or something, I saw it, whatever. And that's not necessarily the best way to do a scan of what's the best solution out there, right? So we needed to work with them first to understand how to do the root cause analysis that's needed to solve the problem, the real problem, and not necessarily a symptom. The second thing was, even if they understood that, they often came to us and said, sometimes they'd say, well, we actually know the company that we want to work with. And this is definitely it. We don't want to look for anybody else. How do we work with this company? And we say, that's great. Awesome. Let's take a look at the technology, at the company. By the way, how did you find this company? Oh, my buddy's on the board, or, whatever. My neighbor. Exactly. My son founded it. And it's funny because that's all of those things have happened, right? And what we understood really quickly was that that's a really poor way, especially for a bunch of scientists, to figure out a systematic approach to finding the right solution. So now we have market scans, market landscape analysis. We have pitch challenges, hackathons, etc. Like I mentioned. Third thing is, if you've ever worked with a large company before, you'll know this pain. If you try to work with a company like Novartis and you're not an already onboarded vendor for Novartis, you're talking about a 9-month plus process of trying to onboard that company and go through this pain. Exactly. So you're so in some cases you might be talking to a tech company that, for example, didn't exist 2 years ago, has a 6-month runway, and you're like, hey, I love your solution. I want to do business with you at a huge scale. However, you have to go through this 12-month process for onboarding before we can exchange dollar number one. They'd say, I don't even know if I'll exist in 12 months, So we needed to figure out a way around that, and we did. And then fourth and final thing was that even when they were able to onboard those companies, or when that wasn't a problem, we often would rely on whatever data was provided to us from that company to know whether this thing is going to work or not work. And very often the way that we want to utilize it is a little bit very different from the use case that they actually collected that data in. And we'd often sit there and just kind of put our thumb in the air and say, well, I think it'll work, or I think it won't work, and pivot away from it.
Well, the data said it would work.
Or the data said it would work, and yes, those are different patients, but it should be the same. Or those are the same patients, but they're a little bit different because they're in another country, or they're in another healthcare system, and so you don't really know. And that guessing process that life science companies tend to go through hasn't been very effective at all. In fact, if you try to find the number of partnerships between healthcare systems, between life science companies and digital health companies that have been actually impactful and effective for patients and healthcare providers, you probably won't run out of fingers. Exactly. So, and there's been thousands upon thousands of engagements. Lots of pilots, but not very much value for patients. And so we needed to figure out a way to effectively test these solutions in a way that would allow us to get that data very quickly, in an inexpensive manner, because at the end of the day, we're still technically a cost center, right? In an inexpensive manner, so that the business can make a very educated decision around what works, what doesn't work, or what needs to be adjusted in a way where it's going to be fit for purpose for the patients and for healthcare providers if either or both of them are using it.
So all of that infrastructure worked down. Who was the main sponsor for all this? Because surely for doing this kind of thing at the scale that you've done it in the 2 years, 14 biomes out there, you must have had senior leadership sponsorship.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's and I'm sure we'll talk about this later with Kate and Drew, but it started like any other, let's say, initiative inside of a large company, which means that it started with the sponsorship of a senior executive. For us, it was our CEO. At the time, he was not the CEO. He was the head of our drug development organization. But it started with his with his, let's say, executive sponsorship behind it, right? But that only gives you cover for a very short period of time. What that gives you is the runway that you need to prove out whether this thing is actually effective or not. Because at some point in time, either your senior executive is going to roll out and go on to something else or to another part of the organization, or people are just going to lose interest, and the momentum will wane and you'll fall to the wayside. So we had to then quickly figure out what the metrics were going to be to prove out these, to prove that these solutions or these projects actually work, to prove that we're bringing value, to prove that we're having impact on the objectives that are important to senior leadership. And now that we've continued to do that over the course of the last 4.5 years, we've managed to survive a number of different reorganizations within not just our company, but within the entire industry.
So now you're here. We've got a few minutes left.
Mm-hmm.
Two things. One, what are the innovations what are the things that you've done? Is there something that you sort of say, you know what, this is exactly what I intended for the Biome to be, and here's the result. Can you share one of those?
Yeah. So there's probably a few. Let me start with one of the latest ones, and probably the one that I'm most excited about, which is actually a service or a product that we've developed inside of the Biome that now serves our broader business, and we've seen it already create value for all parties involved, and that's a thing we call the Evidence Lab. And the Evidence Lab is that piece of the innovation process that I described earlier, where the ability to test was lacking. And the ability to test these digital solutions was lacking because we never had access to the end users, to the healthcare providers, and to the patients to be able to say to them, hey, is this thing work? Does this thing not? Do you want to wear this wearable?
You did something life sciences people don't do. You actually talk to the people.
Go figure. Yeah. We took a lesson from tech and said, hey, we should probably put the users at the center of the journey, as opposed to coming to them and saying, yeah, but this works. This works. It should work because I sat in my conference room and I thought about it for a while, and I think it'll work, so it'll work. Exactly, and we use different colors, so obviously now it works. Yeah, so we figured out a way to be able to partner with healthcare systems, so that we can actually put these things in front of the end users and collect that critical data. That is something that has never been done before across the entire industry at scale, and not only are we able to do it very quickly, we've averaged about 2 to 3 months per study, and a full turnaround if we look at the entire project of 4 months or so. Not only have we been able to do it quickly, we're able to do it at a very, very inexpensive clip. The normal, if a life science company decides to test a digital solution at all, if they do at all, it's usually by including it in a clinical study of some sort. And that is usually years in the making. That's usually, it takes at least years to implement. It takes usually several $1 million to actually do it, no matter how small it is. Doesn't matter if it's a tertiary objective or not. And we're able to bypass all of that. The time is incredible, right? Because you're going by the timeline of the clinical study, not by the timeline that you need for the data.
7 times.
Exactly. And which you end up changing the study 7 times as a result, and that's not very scientific, right? So so we're able to do all of this not only quickly, but at a very, very low cost, which is at a fraction of what would normally be millions of dollars. We do it at far less than that, and so we're able to give the business the information that it needs to decide things that what's working and what's not working. That's probably the most exciting thing.
The doctors or the patients.
That's right.
Very quickly can make a decision of whether this product's going to work or not.
That's right, and healthcare systems love it. I honestly, when I first started building this, I thought, this might die on the vine as soon as if we talk to healthcare systems and they're like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. Right? We're not giving you access to our patients, to our healthcare providers, to our patient data, et cetera. But it turns out actually that they were very much willing to partner as long as there was a structure in place that made sense, where that partnership was of value to all parties involved, including the patients and the healthcare providers.
Fantastic, awesome.
Yeah.
Is it global, this partner?
It is absolutely global. We have projects running across several different biomes in several different countries. It's primarily out of the U.S. Right now. We have partnerships with I'd say the majority of major healthcare systems in the U.S. and quite a few outside of the U.S.
Brilliant. Excellent. Well, we've got a minute by the look of things. We're getting dagger looks from Drew over there. So, yes, you were. Don't lie. That's all that.
As soon as the glasses go up, then you know, like, time's running.
What is Robin sort of learning? What do you do outside of this Biome to keep up to date with all this technology? And it's a crazy world we live in. I mean, the digital health world is moving so fast.
Yeah, it's funny. So I think every digital health related or digital health tech related book that I've read sounds exactly the same as the other, right? And that's not knocking any of them in case any of you wrote any of those, so I apologize. But I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm just saying they tend to echo each other. And what I found is that the inspiration that I know I get and some of my team gets comes from outside of the industry. It comes from how similar problems were solved by other industries that may not have been shackled by the same type of thinking that we've had for the last 100 years in terms of how we develop drugs and how we deliver healthcare. That's something that I think the healthcare systems or the healthcare industry is dying to incorporate. We're just trying to figure out a way to incorporate it best.
Perfect. Well, look at that. We're at zero time. Thank
Perfect.
you so much, Robin.
Yeah.
It's great to hear from you and learn
Thank you.
more about what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.